build agents using the API this way, right? But this is like, if you're using our opinionated stack of the agent SDK, what is it, right? So roughly Unix primitives, like the bash and file system, and we're gonna go over like, my goal is really to sort of show you what that looks like in real time, right? Like, why is bash useful? Why is the file system useful? Why not just use tools? Yeah, agents, I mean, you can also make workflows. I'll talk about that a bit later. The agents build their own context. Thinking about code generation for non-coding.
So basically, AI Engineer, this channel that does these talks and kind of shows the workshop. This is a guy from Anthropic talking about Claude Agent SDK. And so what I've done is I went and grabbed some of the resources in the description and decided to go a little bit further and try to see if I can add it and the agent SDK as it is to a project that I already have called Organized Codebase. And Organized Codebase is a way for me to stay up to date on all of the Claude's components. And when I say components, I mean hooks, subagents, commands, skills, MCP tool usage, and other settings. But basically, I'm listening to that and walking through this. So I'm going to go ahead and play it. It is at 1.6 speed. Hopefully that's okay. But I'm not going to talk.
Like, we use CodeGen to generate docs, query the web, like do data analysis, take unstructured action. So there's a lot of like, this can be pretty counterintuitive to some people. And again, in the like prototyping session, we'll go over how to use code generation for non-coding agents. And yeah, every agent has a container or is hosted locally because this is Claude Code. It needs a file system, it needs bash, it needs to be able to operate on it. And so it's a very, very different architecture. I'm not planning to talk too much about the architecture today, but we can at the end. That's what people are interested in. Or sorry, by architecture, I mean hosting architecture. Like, how do you host an agent and like what are best practices there? Happy to talk about that at the end. Yeah, so well, let me pause there because I feel like I covered a lot already. Any questions so far on agent SDK, agents, yeah, like what you get from it?
Can you explain what code generation for non-coding means exactly?
Yeah, this is like basically when you ask Claude Code to do a task, right? Like, let's say that you ask it to find the weather in San Francisco and like, tell me what I should wear or something, right? Like, what it might do is it might start writing a script to fetch a weather API, right? And then start like, maybe it wants it to be reusable. Like, maybe you want to do this pretty often, right? So it might fetch the weather API and then get the, like, maybe even get your location dynamically, right? Based on your IP address. And then it will like, check the weather and then maybe like call out to like a sub agent to give you recommendations. Maybe there's an API for your closet or wardrobe, right? It's like, so that's an example. I think that like it's kind of, for any single example, we can talk over how you might use CodeGen. A lot of it is like composing APIs is like the high level way. Yeah.
Workflow versus agent, like for repetitive task or like a process, a business process that is always the same. Do you will still prefer to build an agent versus a fully deterministic workflow?
Yeah, so we do have. Oh, sure, yeah. So the question was about workflows versus agents, and would you still use Claude Agent SDK for workflows? Is that right? Yes, and so I mean we just sort of tell you what we do internally, basically. And what we do internally is we've done a lot of like GitHub automations and Slack automations built on the Claude Agent SDK. So we have a bot that triages issues when it comes in. That's a pretty workflow-like thing. But we've still found that in order to triage issues, we want it to be able to clone the code base and sometimes spin up a Docker container and test it and things like that. And so it still ends up being like a very like there's a lot of steps in the middle that need to be quite free-flowing, and then you like give structured output at the end. So yes. All right, we'll take one more question and then you guys again in the blue.
Yeah, so could you talk about security and guardrails? Like if you're using Claude Agent SDK and you're leaning towards using bash as the all-powerful generic tool, then is the onus on building the agent builder to make sure that you're preventing against like common attack vectors, or is that something that the model is doing?
Yeah, so I think this is sort of like the Swiss cheese. Oh yeah, sorry. So the question was permissions on the bash tool, right? Or like how do you think about permissions and guardrails? Like when you're giving the agent this much power over its environment and the computer, how do you make sure it's aligned, right? And so the way we think about this is what we call like the Swiss cheese defense, right? So like there is like on every layer some defenses, and together we hope that it like blocks everything, right? So obviously on the model layer, we do a lot of alignment there. We actually just put out a really good paper on reward hacking. Super recommend you check that out. So like definitely I think Claude models, like we try and make them very, very aligned, right? And so yeah, there's a model alignment behavior. Then there is like the harness itself, right? And so we have a lot of like permissioning and prompting, like we do ASG path parser on the bash tool, for example, so we know fairly reliably like what the bash tool is actually doing, and definitely not something you want to build yourself. And then finally, the last layer is sandboxing, right? So let's say that someone has maliciously taken over your agent. What can it actually do? We've included a sandbox like where you can sandbox network request and sandbox file system operations outside of the file system. And so yeah, ultimately that's what they call like the lethal trifecta, right? Is like like the ability to like execute code in an environment, change the file system, exfiltrate the code, right? I think I'm getting the trifecta a little bit wrong there, but like the idea is basically like if they can exfiltrate your like information back out, right? That's like they still need to be able to extract information. So if you sandbox a network, that's a good way of doing it. If you're hosting on a sandbox container like Cloudflare, Modal, or E2B, Daytona, like all these like sandbox providers, they've also done like some level of security there, right? Like you're not hosting on your personal computer or on a computer with like your prod secrets or something. So yeah, lots of different layers there, and yeah, we can talk more about hosting in depth. So okay, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about Bash and all you need. I think this is something that this is like my shtick. I'm just gonna like keep talking about this until everyone like agrees with me. Or like I think it's something that we found at Improv. I think it's sort of something I discovered once I got here. Bash is what makes Claude Code so good, right? So I think like you guys have probably seen like code mode or programmatic tool use, right? Like the different ways of like composing MCPs. Cloudflare put out some blog posts on that. We put out some blog posts. The way I think about code mode is like, or Bash is that it was like the first code mode, right? So the Bash tool allows you to like store the results of your tool calls to files, store memory, dynamically generate scripts and call them, compose functionality like tail, graph. It lets you use existing software like SFmpeg or LibreOffice, right? So there's a lot of like interesting things and powerful things that the Bash tool can do. And like think about like again what made Claude Code so good. If you were designing an agent harness, maybe what you would do is you'd have a search tool and a lint tool and an execute tool, right? Like end tools, right? Like every time you thought of like a new use case, you're like, I need to have another tool now, right? Instead, now Claude just uses grep, right? And it knows your package manager, so it runs like npm run like test.ts or index.ts or whatever, right? Like it can lint, right? And it can find out how you lint, right? And it can run npm run lint. If you don't have a linter, it can be like, what if I install ESLint for you, right? So this is like, like I said, the first programmatic tool calling, first code mode, right? Like you can do a lot of different actions very, very generically, right? And so to talk about this a little bit in the context of non-coding agents, right? So let's say that we have an email agent, and the user is like, okay, how much did I spend on ride sharing this week? Like it's got one tool call, or generally it's got the ability to search your inbox, right? And so it can run a query like, hey, search Uber or Lyft, right? And without Bash, it searches Uber or Lyft, it gets like 100 emails or something, and now it's just got to like think about it. You know what I mean? And I think like a good like analogy is sort of like imagine if someone came to you with like a stack of papers and like, hey, how much did I spend on ride sharing this week? Can you like read through my emails? Like that would be really hard, right? Like you need very, very good precision and recall to do it. Or with Bash, right? Like let's say there's a Gmail search script, right? It takes in a query function. And then you can start to save that query function to a file or type it. You can grep for prices, you can then add them together. You can check your work too, right? Like you can say, okay, let me grep all my prices, store those as like in a file with line numbers, and then let me then be able to check afterwards, like, was this actually a price? Like what does each one correlate to, right? So there's a lot more like dynamic information you can do to check your work with the Bash tool. So this is like, just a simple example, but like hopefully showing you sort of the power of like composability of Bash, right? So I'll pause there. Any questions on Bash is all you need, the Bash tool, anything I can make a little bit clearer? Yep.
Do you have stats on how many people use YOLO mode?
Stats
on YOLO mode, we probably do. I mean, internally we don't, but that's just, I think we just have a higher security posture. Yeah, I'm not sure. I can probably pull that. Any other questions on Bash? Okay, cool. Yeah, just to give you like some more examples, like let's say that you had an email API and you wanted to, like go through, like fetch like tell me who emailed me this week, right? So you've got two APIs, you've got an inbox API and a contact API. This is like a way you can do it via Bash. You can also do it via CodeGen. This is kind of like enough Bash that it is CodeGen, right? Like Bash is ostensibly CodeGen tool. And then, yeah, like let's say that you had a video meeting agent, right? You want to say like, find all the moments where the speaker said quarterly results in this earnings call, right? You can use SFmpeg to like slice up this video, right? You can use JQ to like start analyzing the information afterwards. So yeah, lots of like powerful ways to use Bash. So I'm going to talk a little bit about workflows and agents. Yeah, you can do both. You can use build workflows and agents on the agent SDK. Yeah, agents are like Claude Code. So if you are like building something where you want to talk to it in natural language and take action flexibly, right? Then that's where you're building an agent, right? Like you have an agent that talks to your like business data and you want to get insights or dashboards or answer questions or write code or something, like that's an agent, right? And then a workflow is kind of like, we do a lot of GitHub actions, for example, right? So you define the inputs and outputs very closely, right? So you're like, okay, take it a PR and give me a code review. And yeah, both of these you can use agent SDK for. When building workflows, you can use structured outputs. We just released this. You can, Google agent SDK structured outputs. But yeah, so you can do both. I'm going to primarily be talking about agents right now. A lot of the things that you can like learn from this are applicable to workflows as well. So yeah, we'll talk about this. Wait, show of hands, how many people have like designed an agent loop before? Okay, cool. Okay, great. So yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing, the meta learning for design agent loop to me is just to read the transcripts over and over again. Like every time you see the agent run, just read it and figure out like, hey, what is it doing? Why is it doing this? Can I help it out somehow, right? And we'll do some of that later, right? So we'll build an agent loop. But here is the three parts to an agent loop, right? So first is gather context, right? Second is taking action, and the third is verifying the work, right? And this is like not the only way to build an agent, but I think a pretty good way to think about it. Gathering context is like, for Claude Code, it's grepping and finding the files needed, right? For an email agent, it's like finding the relevant emails, right? And so these are all like pretty, yeah, like I think thinking about how it finds this context is very important. And I think a lot of people sort of skip the step or like underthink it. This can be like very, very important. And then taking action, how does it like do its work? Does it have the right tools to do it, like code generation, bash? These are more flexible ways of taking action, right? And then verification is another really important step. And so basically what I'd say right now is like, if you're thinking about building an agent, think about like, can you verify its work? Right? And if you can verify its work, it's like a great like candidate for an agent. If you can't verify its work, like it's like, coding, you can verify by linting, right? And you can at least make sure it compiles. So that's great. If you're doing, let's say, deep research, for example, it's actually a lot harder to verify your work. One way you can do it is by citing sources, right? So that's like a step in verification. But obviously research is less verifiable than code in some ways, right? Because like code has a compile step, right? You can also like execute it and see what it does, right? So I think like thinking on, like as we build agents, the ones that are closest to being very general are the ones with the verification step that is very.
All right, so let me pause this. So with the SDK, so this is true. I already have this, and it already does this whole agent loop where gather, act, verify. I was aware of this, but I have to stay in the terminal, right? I push the button, it happens. Um, Interactive terminal prompt. And then with the SDK, I can trigger this from anywhere. So it's saying with a GitHub action, from a scheduled job, so like a cron, and from a webhook, which would be really dope as well. And here's a realistic example. You have 15 client projects. Instead of opening each one and running the scale manually, you could, one script runs overnight and it actually pulls in the names of a couple of my clients. That's crazy. And then it would run the cleanup or organized code base cleanup for all the projects without me having to open up cursor and log in to Claude Code and do the whole thing that way. That's next level stuff. And it's not so much about the party trick of it. It's more so about the um, utility of that and what that might mean to the future. So when you don't take advantage of these new changes and these new advancements, you end up left behind. And so if building programmatically is turning into this, I need to be over here building rather than staying where I'm at just because I'm comfortable and good there. Anyways, but Claude could still do it if it reasons itself into it with SDK. You rely on prompting and hope Claude follows the rules. So you get code level enforcement, which is kind of cool. Realistic example, sensitive, and you add a hook. Now it's impossible for the agent to expose secrets, not just unlikely. Yep. So I can have a hook that blocks this, is what this says, permission, decision, reason. And it has deny or like a block hook. And so what it's saying is the SDK would catch that and set that up for me instead of me having to just know to do it. Which is often the case with me as a vibe coder. There's things about this that I don't know yet in infrastructure and setup and security and some of these other things that I just don't know. And so having a tool like this in place actually is a huge benefit. And that's why you have to go deeper because just because you're a beginner doesn't mean you need to stay at the surface level of vibe coding. Um, you need to be using the tools, the cutting edge tool that is good enough to catch rookie mistakes because those are the mistakes you're going to be making because you're a rookie. So with SDK, defined tools as Python functions, uh, data audit tool, which is what we're running right now. Now Claude can use run meta audit as natural as it uses grep. That's cool. So I don't even need MCP servers for the capability. That's what that's telling me. Deployment as a service without SDK, Claude Code runs on your machine for you. With SDK, you can productize it. That's dope. This is so crazy, man. It's such a powerful skill set to have. Just like think about this, everything I just said, plus customer uploads their project, your agent runs the organized code base applicator, customer downloads the organized result. I could sell that as a service. So automate without being present, yes. Guarantee safety rules can't be bypassed, yes. Add custom tools without MCP server hassle, yes. Build a product service for others. Run agents and schedule jobs. Honestly, if your workflow is you run it, ask it to apply a template, watch and approve, you don't need a SDK. You only need it if you want to trigger automatically, run without you watching, enforcing hard safety rules, serving multiple users and clients. I do want to serve multiple clients and give them access to the example you gave. And then we'll just build this right now. This will be the part that we build. This is a great idea. How do I make it into a service? Please create a plan and a CII diagram and artifacts for me to understand how it would work. Here's the repo. And I'm gonna drop in the repo real quick. So the cool thing about this whole shit is that the reason that I am running it and doing this is because I get to learn while I'm building. That's why I listen to this, and this is why I actually use it hands-on versus just watch a video.
Strong, right? So I think there was a question. Yeah.
So where do you generate a plan for working?
Yeah, I mean, you might. Oh yeah, sorry. The question was, when do you generate a plan before you run through it? So like in Claude Code, you don't always generate a plan, but if you want to, you insert it between the gathering context and taking action step, right? And so plans sort of help the agent think through step by step, but they add some latency, right? And so there is like some trade-off there. But yeah, the agent SDK helps you like do some planning as well. So yeah, yeah.
You make the agent create that to-do list, or like 100% sure that it will create that to-do list and run by it?
Yeah. So the question was, will the agent create the to-do list? Yes. If you're using the agent SDK, we have like some to-do tools that come with it, and so it will like maintain and check off to-dos, and you can display them as you go. So yeah. Any other questions about this right now? Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly talk about like how do you do this stuff? You like, what are your tools for doing it, right? And there are three things you can do. There you have tools, bash, and code generation, right? And I think traditionally, I think a lot of people are only thinking about tools. And yeah, basically one of the call to actions is just figuring out like thinking about it more broadly, right? So tools are extremely structured and very, very reliable, right? Like if you want to sort of have as fast an output as possible with minimal errors, minimal retries, tools are great. Cons, they're high context usage. If anyone's built an agent with like 50 or 100 tools, right? Like they take up a lot of context, and the model it kind of gets a little bit confused, right? There's no like sort of discoverability of the tools, and they're not composable, right? And I say tools in the sense of like if you're using messages or completion API right now, that's how the tools work. Of course, like there's like code mode and programming tool calling, so you can sort of blend some of these. But there's bash. So bash is very composable, right? Like static scripts, low context usage. It can take a little bit more discovery time. Like let's say that you have whatever, you have like the Playwright MCP or something like that, or sorry, the Playwright CLI, the Playwright like bash tool. You can do playwright-help to figure out all the things you can do, but the agent needs to do that every time, right? So it needs to like discover what it can do, which is kind of powerful. That it helps take away some of the high context usage, but add some latency. There might be slightly lower call rates, just because like it has a little bit more time to it needs to like find the tools and what it can do. But this will definitely like improve as it goes. And then finally, code gen, highly composable dynamic scripts. They take the longest to execute, right? So they need linting, possibly compilation. API design becomes like a very, very interesting step here, right? And I'll talk more about like best, like how to think about API design in an agent. But yeah, I think this is like how you, like the three tools you have. And so yeah, using tools, I think you still want some tools, but you want to think about them as atomic actions. Your agent usually needs to execute in sequence, and you need a lot of control over it, right? So for example, in Claude Code, we don't use bash to write a file. We have a write file tool, right? Because we want the user to be able to sort of see the output and approve it, and we're not really composing write file with other things, right? It's like a very atomic action. Sending an email is another example. Like any sort of like non-destructible, like destructible or sort of like unreversible change is definitely like a tool is a good place for that. Then we've got bash. So for example, there are like composable actions like searching a folder, using GitHub, linting code and checking for errors or memory. And so yeah, you can write files to memory, and that can be your bash. Like bash can be your memory system, for example, right? So and then finally you've got code.
It's really interesting. I just saw real quick, it flashed by that I could use a Cloudflare worker. I've been doing a lot with Cloudflare workers lately. Just, it's one of those technologies that keeps popping up as a good use for me. So I think I'm gonna do like a deep dive on Cloudflare workers and what they are and how to use them in real projects. I got like 5 or 6 different projects where I'm using one. So do want to dig into that in a little bit.
Code generation, right? So if you're trying to do this like highly dynamic, very flexible logic, composing APIs, like you're doing data analysis or deep research or like reusing patterns. And so yeah, we'll talk more about code generation in a bit. Any questions so far about like the SDK loop or tools versus bash versus code gen? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are you going to have any ready-made tools for like offloading through our results?
Offloading tool call results like into the file system, or
like, let's say it goes to bash and then the context explodes. Does it like type your command that like blew everything up?
Okay.
Or otherwise just like long outputs or you can your history?
Sure, yeah.
I'm like all the time just uploading them to files.
Yeah. I think that's a good common practice. I think I remember seeing some PRs about this very recently on Claude Code about handling very long outputs, and I don't like know exactly. Like I think we are moving towards a place where more and more things are being like just stored in the file system, and this is like a good example. Yeah, like it's storing like long outputs over time. I think like generally prompting the agent to do this is a good way to think about it. Or even if you have, I think like something I just do always now is like whenever I have a tool call, I save it like the results of the tool call to the file system so that you can like search across it and then have the tool call return the path of the result. So just because like that helps it like sort of recheck its work. So yes.
Do you find that you need to use like the skills structure to help Claude along to use bash better, or out of the box? That's not necessary.
Yeah, so the question was about skills and like, do we need skills to use bash better? Yeah, for context skills, maybe again, skills. Okay, yeah, skills are basically a way of like, allowing our agent to take longer complex tasks and like sort of load in things via context, right? So like for example, we have a bunch of docx skills, and these docx skills tell it how to do code generation to generate these files, right? And so yeah, I think overall skills are basically just a collection of files. They're also sort of like an example of being very like file system or bash tool pilled, right? Because they're really just folders that your agent can like CD into and like read, right? And so yeah, they give like what we found the skills are really good for is pretty like repeatable instructions that need a lot of expertise in them. Like for example, we released a front-end design skill recently that I really like, and it's really just sort of a very detailed and good prompt on how to do front-end design. But it comes from like our best, AI front-end engineer, you know what I mean? And he like really put a lot of thought and iteration to it. So that's one way of using skills. Yeah.
Quick question.
Yes.
So I use like front-end skill.
Sure.
It's very cool. Thanks for the as Paul said, there are multiple documentation like Claude is also there, and it is also at the user level and
I might build this, even if it's
there
not like
should some stuff be dedicated to Claude and some other stuff should
I don't want to miss this.
So the question was about skills.
Even if it's not like something that I use immediately and make real, I still might want to build this. You'll notice that as you work on projects also, especially right now I'm using Cloud Desktop, especially when you're digging in, you'll start to realize that, hey, the whole point of me doing one thing is so that I can just learn from it for, later projects. It's not that I want to build this because I think that it's the best way to offer the service. It is the beginning level of me offering this service looks like this, using Cloudflare Worker, using WAP's API, using this agent SDK. I now open up an opportunity for me to, I don't know why it's using blue highlighted text. It opens up an opportunity for me to provide a service to the members that's similar to what I was already going to do, is just kind of give them the skill and give them the organized code base template. But not everybody wants that. Some people want context, and that's part of like selling people things in business, especially software. I've learned in agents and just AI in general, is sometimes the context is where the money's made. And so if I'm able to provide these guys with, this is insane. It shows you everything that I need. Hano framework. So I don't know what Hano framework is. This is new for me. I'm familiar with these two. And then through sandboxing, I'll figure that out. Probably use EBT since it's EBT, E2B, since it's already there. And then the whole point, agent SDK, boom, WAPO auth. That's pretty straightforward. Cloudflare queues. That's really sick, man. Oh, okay. Yeah, we're definitely using this. Let's go ahead and then cost per total per job is 17 cents. Yeah. And then I just charge them to use it. And then I have phased build here. That's kind of crazy. Yeah, this is cool. I like this. I'm wondering what the front end part is going to be like. Example modal execution, Cloudflare Worker API. They log in, drag their messy project zip. They would have to zip it though. That's the part I don't like. It'd be better if they could just give me a directory file. They'd have to zip that. Yeah, that's the whole point. Damn. Yeah, that's true. Makes your course more valuable. Theory plus tool. Serverless and pay-per-use. No other course offers a tool like this. It's pretty dope, man. This is great. Let's create a phased plan so I can build it. So I can write the code and build it in Claude code. I usually tell it that I'm writing the code with Claude code so it doesn't write code when it's creating the phase plan. Defer to for the what do they call it, sandbox. So this is my first time using the sandbox too. And then I have this indie dev Dan sandbox situation that I have not gotten to yet. Let's look at it real quick. Is it this? I think it's this one. Yep. Let me see something. Damn, it just happens to be E2B. What is this?
Engineers, the king is back.
I love this guy. He's so good. He's a little, yeah, this is ill, man. We're gonna go ahead and do this. Okay, yeah, let's add this. Let's use this. This is a perfect use case, actually. This is why I do this, man. It's because I find places to use things that I come across that I otherwise wouldn't necessarily do. So I want to do that first. This is just how I prompt. It doesn't mean anything. To the project. All right. So while that's doing that, let's see. About 30 minutes in.
This model is like that top tier engineer.
So something interesting happened.
Oops. This guy.
Skill.md versus Claude.md and how to think about that, right? And I think like I'll say all of these concepts are so new. You know, like even Claude Code is like released it like 8 or 9 months ago, right? Like, and so skills were released like 2 weeks ago. Like I won't pretend to know all of the best practices for everything, right? I think generally skills are a form of progressive context disclosure, and that's sort of a pattern that we've talked about a bunch, right? Like with like Bash and like preferring that over like purely like normal tool calls. It's like it's a way of like the agent being like, okay, I need to do this. Let me find out how to do this, and then let me read in the skill.md, right? So you ask it to make a docx file, and then it like sees into the directory, reads how to do it, writes some scripts, and keeps going. So.
Get my charger. I'll be back. So that's a little bit better. Hell of an assumption that y'all just want to see me recording the way I was. Anyways, I got some snacks, so I'm probably gonna go mute for a little while I chomp on these snacks. But I will be playing that video so y'all can at least see that part. This is insane. It's still like building me some stuff here, which is nuts. Damn, it was building that whole time I was gone. That's wild. But I also started thinking about if anybody's played around with like plugin marketplaces, they look like this. I'll just show you. Organized code base. So go check out Organized AI, by the way. This is my GitHub. And go follow it. I got lots of stuff on there right now that's public even. It won't be that way for forever. Even got Strudel related stuff. If you guys don't know what Strudel is, it's this. I'm pretty sure y'all can hear this. Ah, no. Damn. All right. So basically, you can make music. And so I programmed like some drum and bass and some other stuff. Stuff that I'm into. Anyways, there's this plugin marketplace. I built this just a couple days ago. I used some of the official Anthropic plugins as well. But then I can access this through, show you guys for the sake of demonstration here. I don't know why that pops up every time. I need to fix that. I'll do that some other time. But you can go to your plugins / plugin, and then there's a marketplace. So I'm loading my marketplace. And I thought to myself, this is just on the 5th, so a couple days ago. I thought to myself how valuable this would be to make it available to every student. So I want every student to be able to build their own marketplace. And so it'll start with the official guys, but then I want it to also go over to this. So let's build that. So I'm gonna jump over to the project and say, I'm gonna do it with my voice because I haven't done that yet. I want to create a plugin marketplace with the Claude Code SDK as a service, similar to what we just did with the Codebase applicator. But this is going to be for the Claude Code Mastery course participants tool that they can access as well. And the idea is to give them the ability to build their own plugin marketplace and access it through Claude Code. So the only thing I don't like about this that's kind of dope. I can pick old chats. I didn't even think I could do that, but I can't pick a new chat inside of a existing project, I don't think, which is problematic. But let's do this. And then I think I have, if I don't, I'll just do this real quick. Take this screenshot. Boom, I'm in Claude Code. Actually, let's do it better than that. Just show the whole thing here. And now we got that. And so I'm gonna pop this over. It's a fantastic idea. Plugin marketplace for Claude Code Mastery participants would create a thriving ecosystem. Well, yeah, we'll just share it. the idea is for them to build their own, though. It's cool to share and it's cool to have access, but I want them to be empowered. Whenever you take a course, it's not just about information, man. You can get the information for this stuff anywhere. Anyways, I'm gonna eat these snacks, so I'm about to go on mute.
Yeah, I think like there's still some iteration to build around like what exactly you like define as a skill and how you split it out. But yeah, I think yeah, lots of best practices still around there still. Yeah.
So yesterday, we talked about the future of skills.
Yeah.
Do you see these as ultimately becoming part of the model? And you believe that less of the skills is just a way to bridge the gap?
Yeah, so the question was, are skills ultimately part of the model? Are they a way to bridge the gap? I missed Barry's talk, Barry Nash's talk yesterday, but yeah, I think roughly the idea is that the model will get better and better at doing a wide variety of tasks, and skills are the best way to give it out of distribution tasks, right? But I would broadly say that like it's really, really hard, especially like, you know, if you're like not at a lab to like tell where the models are going exactly. My general rule of thumb is like I try and like rethink or rewrite my like agent code like every 6 months, just because I'm like things have probably changed enough that I've like baked in some assumptions here, and so like I think that like our agent SDK is built to as much as possible sort of advance with capabilities, right? Like the bash tool will get better and better. We're building on top of Claude code, so as Claude code evolves, you'll get those wins out of the gate. But at the same time, like, you know, things are so different now like than they were a year ago in terms of like AI engineering, right? And I think like a general best practice to me is sort of like, hey, we can write code 10 times faster, we should throw out code 10 times faster as well. And I think thinking about like not so like hedging your bets on like where is the future right now, but like what can we do today that really works, right? And like let's get market share today and not be afraid to throw out code later. If you're a startup, this is arguably your largest advantage that you have over competitors. They're like, you know, larger companies have like 6-month incubation cycles, and so they're always like stuck in the past of like with the agent capabilities, right? And so your advantage is that you can like be like, hey, the agent, the capabilities are here right now. Let me build something that uses this right now, right? So yeah. Any other questions on? We're talking about skills in Bash. Okay, it seems like there are a lot of skill questions. So yeah, I think at the back, someone you might have to shout.
Yeah. So why would you use a skill versus an API? They look very similar to Python program. There could be a package, right?
Yeah. So the question was why use a skill versus an API? Good question. I think that like when you like these are all forms of progressive disclosure basically to the agent to figure out what it needs to do. And I'll go over like examples of like you just have an API, right? In our prototyping session. It's totally like use case dependent, right? Like just I think like I don't think there's a general rule. I think it's like read the transcript and see what your agent wants. If your agent always wants like thinks about the API better as like a API.ts file or something or API.py file, do that. You know, that's great. Like I think skills are like sort of an introduction into like thinking about the file system as a way of storing context, right? And they're a great abstraction, but there are many ways to use the file system. And I should say that like something about skills is that like you need the bash tool, you need a virtual file system, things like that. So the agent SDK is like basically the only way to really use skills to like their full extent right now. So yeah, back there. Yeah, the question was, can we expect a marketplace for skills? So yeah, Claude Code has a plugin marketplace that you can also use with the agent SDK. We're evolving that over time. You know, like it was like a very much a V0. And by marketplace, I'm not sure if people will be charging for this exactly. It's more just like a discovery system, I think. But yeah, that exists right now. You can do /plugins in Claude Code, and you can find some. So yeah.
What's your current thinking about when you're going to reach for like the SDK, you know, to solve a problem?
Yes, the question is when do I use the SDK to solve a problem? If I'm building an agent, basically, I think that like my overall belief is that like for any agent, the bash tool gives you so much power and flexibility, and using the file system gives you so much power and flexibility, you can always eke out performance gains over it, right? And so yeah, in the prototyping part of this talk, we're going to like look at an example with only tools and an example with bash in the file system and compare those two. And yeah, that's what I mean by being bash tool built. I'm like I just like start from the agent SDK, you know, and I think a lot of people at Anthropic have started like doing that as well. So of course, I do want to say that there are lots of times where the agent SDK is kind of annoying because you've got like this network sandbox container and you're like, I don't want to do this, you know what I mean? Like I want to run on my browser locally, right? I totally get that. I think there is like a real performance trade-off. The way I think about it is sort of like React versus like jQuery. You know, like I when I was coming up, I was like very into web dev and like, you know, I was using jQuery and Backbone, and then React came out and it was by Facebook, and they're like, you have to, here's JSX, like we just made this up, and now there's a bundler, right? I'm like, oh, it's so annoying. But like it generally makes the model, or it made web apps more powerful, right? And I think we're sort of like the agent SDK is sort of like the reactive agent frameworks to me, because it's like we build our own stuff on top of it, so you know it's real, and all the annoying parts of it are just like things where we're annoyed about it too, but we're like it just works. Like you gotta do this, you know? So yeah. Yeah, okay, more skill questions, I guess. Yeah, right here.
I don't know if it's a quick
Oh, sure. Bash question. Great, I love
you have
Bash.
custom internal like bash tools.
Yeah.
How do you let the agent discover that, or do those have to become tool?
Okay, the question is, if you have custom agent bash tools, how do you let the agent discover that? By custom bash tools, do you mean like bash scripts?
Yeah, bash scripts, yeah.
Yeah, so I think, where is it? You just put it in the file system, and you tell it, like, hey, like, here's a script. You can call it, you know, I'm generally thinking in the context of the Claude agent SDK, where it has the file system and the bash tools are tied together. This is kind of an anti-pattern I see sometimes where people are like, oh, like we're going to host the bash tool in this like virtualized place, and it's not going to interact with other parts of like the agent loop, you know, and that sort of makes it hard because if you got a tool result that's saving a file, then your bash tool can't like read it, you know what I mean, unless it's all in one container. So does that answer your question? Like
yeah, kind of. I mean, like, so you're saying you just put it in like system prompt or something?
Yeah, just put in system prompt, like, hey, you have access to this. I would like sort of design all my CLI scripts to have like a dash help or something, so that the model can call that, and then it can like progressively disclose like every like sub command inside of the script. Yeah. Yeah, Victor.
Yeah. So, like my question is now when to reach for the agent SDK. So, have you designed, or rather, would you recommend someone use the agent SDK to build like a generic chat agent, as compared to like, oh, I'm building an agent where you have some input and the agent goes and does some stuff, and finally I care about the output, as compared to let's say someone like, are you using or do you foresee using the agent to build like the agent SDK to build like Claude, the app, rather than Claude Code?
Yeah. So the question is, when do we reach for the agent SDK? Does like would we use the agent SDK to build Claude.ai, which is a more traditional chatbot than Claude Code? I think Claude Code is like a very like interface is not a traditional chatbot interface, but like the inputs and outputs are right?
This is insane. It's like it's definitely lining up with what I was already thinking and considering here. So using a plugin, you just mentioned, versus tool use. So bash and file system versus um, just explicit tool use, MCP. MCP was kind of like the concept, offering that, right? And now going further into it, it's basically looking like I don't need that explicit tool use. I can just create a function, so a Python function to run whatever bash that I need to. And so that's going to be kind of cool to play around with. I'm actually really excited about that. So this is the whole thing. Damn, that's nuts. It just built the whole thing. It doesn't mean that it works, and I gotta obviously like take a look at it, but this is how powerful this is, because essentially if yeah, let's see how it works though. Essentially this is me proving that concept, and then I can tweak it and make it like actually do what I need it to do. And then we got the WAP integration. They even got like a revenue sharing situation. It's kind of cool. This isn't even real. I don't know why they're. I hate it when they do that. Yeah, this GitHub doesn't exist. What are you talking? They often do that. It's just kind of like I treat it as an example. Add this framework here. to skill. Okay, and then I'd have to, that's going to be weird because I think we kind of crossed some references here, but I'm gonna go with it to try to see where it lands because it might give me an interesting idea. And here's the wife. It's kind of with a snack. Wife with the snack. Wife with the snack. Wife with the snack. Thank you.
Wrapped and sliced.
Are you the snack or is this snack the snack?
Me.
Love you.
How's your recording?
It's good. We're on Twitch right now.
Oh, nice.
And so I just figured out something pretty cool. For this agent skill here. Oh, flesh it. I mean, what I was supposed to just look at it instead of eat it? Of course I'm gonna eat it. No, not quite. Almost. I had to go on mute so they didn't have to listen to me smacking. Thank you. Functions as suggested. We'll do, I can't spell because so much AI psychosis. All right, there's that. I need to watch that about the Mongo thing.
Right, like you input code in, you get like, or you input text in, you get text out, and you take actions along the way. You might have seen that like when we rolled out doc creation for Claude.ai, now it has the ability to spin up a file system and like create spreadsheets and PowerPoint files and things like that by generating code. And so that is like, we're in the midst of sort of like merging our agent loops and stuff like that. But broadly, yeah, Claude.ai will is getting more and more, like you see it with skills and the memory tool and stuff, more and more file system build, right? So we do think it's like a broad thing that you can use just generally, and happy to talk through examples. Yeah, one more question, and then we'll keep on. Yeah.
Still trying to understand the rule of thumb on when to build a tool or use a tool, when to wrap something with a script, or just let the agent go wild on the bash. Because I'll give you an example. Let's say I need to access a database from time to time. I can use an MCP, I can wrap it in a script, and I can just let the agent call an endpoint from that directly from bash, right?
Yeah, great question, great question. So it's still trying to grok like when to use tools versus bash versus codegen, and he gave an example like, okay, I have a database. I want the agent to be able to access it in some way. What should I do? Should I create a tool that queries the database in some way? Should I use the bash? Should I use codegen? Right? These are three ways of doing it. I think that they are like, you could use any of them, and I think like part of it is like I think. Unfortunately, there's no like single best practice, right? This is like kind of a system design problem. But let's say that you want to access your bash, your database via a tool. You would do that if your database was very, very structured, and you have to be very careful about like, I know you're accessing like user-sensitive information or something like that, and you're like, hey, I can only take in this input, and I need to like give this output, and I have to mask everything else about the database from the agent, right? Obviously, that like sort of limits what the agent can do, right? Like it can't write a very dynamic query, right? If you're writing a full-on SQL query, I would definitely use bash or codegen, just because when the model is writing a SQL query, it can make mistakes, and the way it fixes its mistakes is by like linting or like running the file, looking at the output, seeing if there are errors, and then iterating on it, right? And so I generally like, if I'm building an agent today, I'm giving it as much access to my database as possible, and then I'm like putting in guardrails, right? Like I'm probably limiting its like write access in different ways. But what I would do is like I would give it write access and put in specific rules, and then give it feedback if it tries to do something it can't do. You know what I mean? And so I know this is like kind of a hard problem, but I think this is the like set of problems for us to solve, right? Like we built a bash tool parser, and that's a super annoying problem. But we need to solve that in order to like let the agent work generally, right? And same thing with like database, like yes, it's quite hard to understand what is the query doing, but if you can solve that, you can let your agent work more generally over time. So yeah, I think thinking about it like flexibly as much as possible, and keeping tools to be like very, very like sort of atomic actions, right? That you need a lot of guarantees around.
Same thing.
Yeah.
How do you ensure the role-based access controls are taken care of?
How do you, so the question is, how do you ensure that the role-based access controls are taken care of? Usually that's in like how you provision your API key or your backend service or something like that, right? Like, I think that like, probably what I do is like I create like temporary API keys. Sometimes people create proxies in between to insert the API keys if you're concerned about exfiltration of that. But yeah, I create like API keys for your agents that are scoped in certain ways, and so then on the back end you can sort of check it's like what it's trying to do, and like if it's an agent you can like give it different feedback. So yeah. All right, yeah, one question.
Anything you could tell us more about the memory tool, the internal memory tool?
I'm not trying to like keep a secret. I don't know exactly. Like I haven't read the code, but I think it generally works on the file system. And so
can you expose it to the agent SDK, or is it already been done?
I would say that like we've had this question a bunch. I would just use the file system in the Claude agent SDK. I would just create like a memories folder or something and tell it to write memories there. It's like I don't know the exact implementation of the memory tool, but it does use the file system in that way. So yeah. All right. Yeah. Last question on this. Yeah.
How you are managing for the bash and the code? How you are managing the reusability? Suppose the same agent is rolled out to hundreds of users, and same code every time it is generating and every time it is executing. So how can we use the reusability?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yeah, let's say you have two agents interacting with two different people. The question is like, how do you think about reusability between agents, or how do agents communicate, right? I think this is a thing to be discovered. I think there's a lot of best practices and system design to be done on like. Because traditionally with web apps, you're serving one app to like a million people, right? And with agents, like with Claude Code, we serve like a one-to-one like container. When you use Claude Code on the web, it's like it's your container, right? And so there's not a lot of like communication between containers. It's a very, very different paradigm. I'm not going to say that like I know exactly the best system design to do that, right? And like I think there's a lots of best practices on like, okay, these agents are reusing work. How can we give them like general scripts that combine together the work that they've done? How can we make them share it? I would generally think this is sort of like a tangent about on like agent communication frameworks. I would say that like we probably don't need like a whole. We don't. I think this is more of a personal opinion. I think like we probably don't need to reinvent like a new communication system. There are like the agents are good at using the things that we have, like HTTP requests and bash tools and API keys and named pipes and all of these things. And so like probably like the agents are just making HTTP requests back and forth from each other, using HTTP server. There's a bunch of this is like yeah, this is not the prototyping session, but I think this is like will be a good sort of like way into it. Let's say we're making a spreadsheet agent. What is the best way to search a spreadsheet? What's the best way to execute code? Or what's the best way to take action in a spreadsheet? What is the best way to link to a spreadsheet? Right? These are all like really interesting things.
One thing that I've noticed about being in the space. So I've been using Claude Code since it came out. Even when it wasn't part of the plan, you had to pay money for API calls. 3.5, 3.7, Sonnet. I was spending money. Probably spent like 2 G's when I didn't even have it back then. Yeah, because I was transitioning. Y'all will get my full story some other time, but transitioning into this AI stuff full time without any kind of prospects or clients. And I knew it was something. I knew that I had to pay attention and lock in. And so fast forward to today, I've known about Agent SDK. I've added it to organized code base, the template. It's part of the setup, the interactive setup that I ended up not even needing because I use the applicator skill now. Found a better way, in short. And so now getting this video at this time with this course on the horizon, the course is not that. Where's this shit at, man? I'm still frustrated with how all this shit looks. It's not here. It's going to be in my products. Like you have to freaking do gymnastics just to get anywhere. And then yeah, so it's doing all this shit, man. All right, so I think this is going. All right, finally, woo. Okay, so here we are. 3 of the 4 steps are required. What am I missing? I gotta add images, and then I'll be able to go live. So I got it for free, $200 a month, or you can buy one time. But I've got 20 different chapters, 2 modules in each one of those chapters, so 40 different lessons. On top of that, I'm building this plugin marketplace, because most people aren't going to be, I mean, I would imagine people who are taking this course, they're just trying to get a understanding as to how to use Claude Code and why they should. And then I add on these bonuses like how do you use the Agent SDK, how to use this tool to essentially build things. I'm going to walk them through setting up plugins. So a plugin is basically a predetermined preset. So it's like a loadout in Call of Duty, I guess. Like you already have the combination you need for the type of work that you're about to do. So if I'm about to do like a dashboard, I could have dashboarding tools, subagents, skills, et cetera, et cetera. And then I could use Claude Agent SDK to wrap it all in so that I don't have to be in terminal while it's building. Another thing that's kind of interesting that I definitely want to talk about is the Claude Code Web. So I'm going to make, you guys can see I've been using it a lot. I'm going to make an entire chapter about that. Let's do that while I'm thinking about it, because I definitely will forget. And so here's the course. And then I'm going to have like 5 or 6 courses in the background that I'll swap out if I can figure out how to like make certain courses or chapters invisible. If you don't know, I'm on Luma. So especially if you're is my Instagram up? Let me see if I can do this real quick. I think it's with a underscore maybe, or maybe with a period. I don't know. I'm getting old. Oh well. So where is my, here it is. So this guy right here shows all my events, and I had this thing called a Claude Code Walk. It was a concept I came up with mostly because I like going for walks, and the leaves were really pretty around this time, right before Christmas. And so we went and did it, and during that walk I talked about how I was using Claude Code Web in order to run projects in the background while I was walking. And so I set everything up on Claude Code Web, push a button, and monitor it on my phone, which was really dope. Autonomously. What do they call it whenever you're in terminal and you have to, I guess, call and response? Style prompting. in the terminal. Here's an example of an event I recently did advocating for this idea and what it could mean for the future. I think it definitely means something for the future. I think we're going to have a situation where people are starting their work in one place, picking up their work while they're at the grocery store, while they're at their kids' t-ball game. It's fucked up. Maybe not the t-ball game part, but like you can be doing other things and building, especially if you're using organized code base or a agent SDK with a really tight plan and project structure that you're aware of. It probably won't be the best for like figuring out things for you. You probably want to be like right there, hands on. Like I wouldn't want to do everything I've done in this session with figuring out that I could offer agent SDK ideas and uses to the people who take the course. I wouldn't want to do that while on my phone or while on the go. I want to be sitting down, learning, and trying to figure this out here and prompting back and forth for the sake of, okay, let me see a diagram. Okay, let me see, explain this part. Okay, break this down. Okay, give me a planned phase, blah, 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 blah. I do want to be doing some stuff the old way, so to speak. But while I'm doing it the old way, eventually I'm going to get to a spot to where I can run an agent autonomously through a Claude Code Web, through an agent SDK, through a combination. It's not so much about, hey, there's just one new way and that's going to be it. It's more so I want to create a chapter around add the chapter to the course. Okay, so this is like the framework for the chapter. I think the main thing that I'm excited about is a lot of the teaching and the learning and the sharpening and the value is going to happen through the live calls. So I'm planning on doing like Zoom calls. I'm also planning on maybe a Discord call or, and then obviously Twitch. I just got to kind of figure out what combination is going to be the best for me and the best for the audience. So I want to make it so it's easy for people to interact and get what they need from it. So we'll figure that part out later. But this is kind of it, man. Chapter on this. Now I need a chapter on Claude Code SDK. And then I'm just going to use this transcription situation that I've already copied. I'll copy it again. And then I want to add that to column. They just showed Lex Friedman. I see Lex Friedman probably once a week. And now it's saying that we're having syncing issues. I got 236 gigs free now. So no more issues there. Freaking Google Drive was crushing me. I'm not sure why that happened that way, but let's add this. I want my students to learn the way I have so far by doing and using the concepts. Do you not get the concept? I think that's how it goes.
To do, I'm going to do like a Figma and we can go over it.
Here, man, hold on. I can't just say that, and then that'd be really messed up if I said it wrong. Yeah, do you not get the concept?
Hey, Bo.
This shit goes hard, man.
Will, what that is?
5.7 million
Do you
views.
not get the concept?
Do you not get the concept? Hey. I got chills when that shit dropped. Shit's hard, man. Alright.
If someone could grab a water as well, that'd be great. I like could really use water, man. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Okay, so we're going to let's talk through it. Or why don't you spend like a couple minutes yourselves thinking about this question? Right. You have a spreadsheet agent. You want it to be able to search. You want it to be able to like gather context, take action, verify its work. How would you think about it, right? So like, just spend some time thinking through that. Take some notes or something. Great.
We'll see. I'll deal with that later. It's all like framework now. I was gonna say this last part about the course. I built the whole course with Claude Code. I built a course about Claude Code with Claude Code. And I looked into my own projects and looked at concepts that I found useful. And I built it. Pretty nuts. I think that's it. What is this? The favicon. Favicon. So it's a lot of fun, man. I'm super excited to offer the concepts and then flesh them out in a way that is usable for people. I don't know why you would put it here. Yeah, I was wondering if they're going to use the what's the name, but they are. So there's that. Shit, I guess I'm not going to have to use MCP at all. I haven't been using it much, but like this integration right here is definitely it. But then they changed the name of it. They used to just call them MCPs, and now they're called like capabilities, components. I can't remember. I'll look at it in a little bit. Yeah, let's just look at it real quick. I don't like doing this because it was busy, but connectors, not MCPs, connectors. And I got a WAP connector. This is a remote SSE. Pretty interesting stuff, man. So it's remote MCP basically is what I'm kind of gathering. I don't know. But like in my mind, how it works and what it does, I know what it does, but how it works is kind of fuzzy because I've built my own MCPs, BHT, MCP, and Super Bowl, and I was using them for a while early on, and all I did was combine those tools with other tools, and then I just crushed my context window. I think Super Bowl had like 50 something different tools, so it's like way overkill. But you don't know that when you're first starting out, so whatever. But the point is I never was able to get a remote MCP server off the ground for myself, which is and then I've got these guest passes and give those out later. And then capabilities are like skills. So these are all my skills. Got like a few. I maxed out my skills at one point right before Christmas. It was like you can't fit any more skills. I think they max you out at 20, so that was pretty interesting. I mean, obviously I don't I'll just move the order later. It's freaking annoying. Kickoff template 4. That's cool. Clear guidance on when to use versus when to stay engaged. Anchored by clock out work event philosophy. Would you like me to add quiz questions to the quiz lesson? Of course. This is where it gets annoying because it's like, bro, y'all already know what I'm doing here and why we're doing it. So move this chapter before the resources. Add the quiz questions to the quiz lesson. Quiz lesson. Make sure to add the markdown file. I think it's a PDF and HTML to the Git repo. Period. Chapter formats. And Git. And so the part they don't do, so then I gotta go here, here, gotta do a little double dutch, here, 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 and then X this. Boom. You not get the concept? Then I gotta do this again. Then I gotta select again. And then I gotta paste it again. All right, that's gonna be one of those good enough situations, and then I'm just gonna post this. All right, let's jump back into this video. I want to get almost through it, if not all the way through it. We're halfway done. 2-hour long video, damn. It's crazy. I don't even like register that it was that long. I can't say pause because if I do start that whole pause
okay, does everyone had a little bit of time to think about this? Does anyone want more time, or just dive into it? Okay. What's the best way for an agent to search a spreadsheet? Realizing I have to type with one hand now. I should figure this out because I'm going to type later. Okay. Searching a spreadsheet. Any ideas? How do you search a spreadsheet? Like, what would you do? CSV.
Right, so that's going what
okay, you got a CSV. Okay, now like your agent wants to like search a CSV. What does it do? It greps it. Okay. What does the grep look like?
You just look at all the headers.
Look at the headers. Okay.
Headers of all sheets.
Okay, great. Yeah, and let's say I'm looking for the revenue in 2024 or something. Now I've got my headers. Like, I'm just gonna pull up a spreadsheet, right? Let's say that the revenue is there's a revenue column, and then there's like a let's see. Okay, so yeah, let's say it's something like this, right? Like, how do I get revenue in 2026, right? So this is sort of like a tabular problem, right? Like, there is revenue here, and there's also 2026 here, right? So it's like a multi-dimensional step, right? We could look at the headers that will then give us, like, if you just pull this, you'll get 100, 200, 300, right? So we need a little bit more. And any other ideas? Yeah.
There's a bash tool for it, the awk, AWK, I think.
Awk? Okay. Yeah. And what would it awk for?
Well, it depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah. That's the question, right? Like, what is the user looking for, right? They're probably looking for something like this, like revenue in 2026, right?
Maybe use the APIs to use the Google tools to add all the numbers together, or we look up something like this.
Yeah, so the idea is like use the APIs, like use the Google APIs to like look it up. That's great, but yeah, let's say we're working locally, we need to sort of design these APIs, yeah?
SQLite or DB can query the CSV directly and work with it.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah, I didn't know that. That's great. So yeah, you use SQLite to query CSV. That's a great like sort of creative way of thinking about API interfaces, right? Like if you can translate something into a interface that the agent knows very well, that's great, right? And so like if you have a data source, if you can convert it into a SQL query, then your agent really knows how to search SQL, right? So thinking about this transformation step is really, really interesting. It's a great way of like designing like an agentic search interface. So yeah. Yeah.
Is there any kind of ranking within the tool? Is Claude smart enough to start ranking the right tool for the right job? Because that's kind of what we're talking about here, right tool for the right job.
Yeah, is Claude smart enough to rank the right tool for the right job? Yeah, if you prompt it, you know, like, or like, I think this is one of those things where like, I don't know, let's find out. Like, let's read the transcript. If it's not, like, how can you help it? Yeah, just sort of like, I think all of these things are like an intuition. You know, it's like kind of like riding a horse. Not that I've ever rode a horse, but I know just like, I imagine it's like riding a horse. Yeah, like you're sort of giving these signals to the horse, you're calming it down, you're trying to understand how do you push it faster, you know what I mean? And sort of like, it's a very organic like thing, right? Like I think we like to say that models are grown and not designed, right? So we're like sort of understanding their capabilities, yeah. Yeah, and where it is, yeah.
Quick question, so somewhere that I can have metadata in the spreadsheet, you give description, like a different document.
Yeah, that's
for example, KPIs, I'm kind of getting an idea into that really intelligent to ask questions about spreadsheet.
Yeah, so that's another great pattern. Is like, okay, can you add metadata to the spreadsheet? So these are some questions that you might want to think about before, like when you're thinking about search, is like what pre-processing can you do to make the search better, right? And so one example is that you translate it into like a SQL format or something where you use something that can query it, right? That's like a translation step. Another step is like maybe you have a tool or like a pre-processing step where another agent annotates the spreadsheet and like adds information so that the agent can then like search across that information better, right? So yeah, one more.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
I mean, all those tools sound great, but
yeah.
Why can't the agent just do what was suggested, read the header, and then just get the date? Like, I feel like that should be pretty trivial for retest.
Yeah, probably I should have like prepared this in code. But yeah, well, I built a ton of spreadsheet agents before. Basically, it's kind of hard to do. Yeah. So basically, what I would think about is like, so we've got like, okay, Sean, do you have suggestions about how I can code at the same time? Go ahead. Oh, I see. Yeah. Or do you work at Whisperflow or something? Or
stick a mic in your shirt.
There's a microphone button on the mat.
There's a microphone button on the mat.
Stick the mic in your shirt.
Oh, I just don't trust that stuff, man. Okay. Maybe I shouldn't be working in an AI lab. Okay, so let's see. Hold on. Okay, so one way to do it is like, you see in spreadsheets, right? Like you can say here, you can design formulas, right? So like B3 to right. So this is a syntax, for example, that the agent's pretty familiar with, like B3 to B5, right? And so you can design an agentic search interface, which is like this, right? Like B3, B5 or something, right? So like your agentic search interface can take in a range, right? Can take in a range string, right? And these are things that like the agent knows pretty well, right? Like you can do SQL queries, right? The agent knows SQL queries pretty well, right? Like these, you can also do XML, right? Sorry, the font is so small. Okay. Yeah, you can also do XML. I'm not sure if you guys know, but like XLX files are XML in the backend, right? And XML is very structured. You can do like an XML search query, and there are different libraries that can do that. So that's one example, right? Is like how do you search and gather context? And I hope this sort of like illustrates to you that like gathering context is really, really creative, right? Like and like there's so many iterations, and if you've only tried one iteration, it's probably not enough, right? Like think about like as many different ways as you can. Like try these out, right? Like try SQL, try the search, try the grep and awk, and like all of these things, and have a few tests that you're trying across different things, and see what the agent likes and what it doesn't like. It's going to be different for each case.
Sorry.
Yeah.
When you say agent, you're referring to Claude, the model, or because we're building an agent here.
Yeah.
And you're relying on already pre-existing knowledge of how you do it. So now, who's doing that? The model?
Yeah. Because the question is like, where does the knowledge come from? Is it the model? Is it like what do I mean by agent? Yeah. Generally, I think what you're looking for is like you have a problem. You want to make it as in distribution as possible for the agent, right? And so the agent knows a lot about a lot of different things. It knows a lot about, for example, finance, right? So if you ask it to make a DCF model, it knows what DCF is, right? And you can, if you want to give it more information, you can make a skill, right? But so it knows what DCF is. It knows what SQL is. Can it combine those things together, right? And so like ideally, you want to like your problem is going to be out of distribution in some way, right? Like there's some like information that's not on the internet or something that you have. Or something somewhat unique to you, and you want to try and like massage it to be as in distribution as possible. Yeah, it's very, very creative. I think like it's not like it's not a science to me. It's very much like an art. So Yeah, okay, so we've tried gathering context, then taking action. We can probably do a lot of the same stuff here that we've done before, right? Like we can do like insert to the array, right? If we've got like a SQL interface, right, we can do a SQL query, we can edit XML. These are like often very similar, right? Like taking action and gathering context. That you probably want a similar API back and forth. And then the last thing is verifying work, right? Like how do you think about that? Check for null pointers, right? Is one of the ways to do it. Any other ideas on verification or yeah?
Sorry, I'm a bit confused with what you say.
Yeah.
Like when you're using other SDKs to build the agent, I don't need to tell it how it should gather the context.
Sure.
I just give it the context and explain. This is what, like, basically explain in plain English what it's meant to do.
Yeah.
And what I tend to do, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I actually end up creating a separate agent for QA.
Oh, interesting.
To verify, because I don't trust the agent to verify itself. But I'm just a bit confused about the level of detail I need to provide the agent in that example.
Yeah, okay, so the question is about giving context to the agent versus having it gather its own context. You mentioned that you sometimes use a Q&A agent. Can I ask like what like domain you're building your agent in, or?
In cybersecurity.
Okay, sure, yeah. I think that I think I need to like look into more specifics, but the Claude agent SDK is great for cybersecurity, and like I would generally push people on like let the agent gather context as much as possible. You know, like let it find its own work as much as possible. You're trying to give it the tools to find its own work. The way I think about this is kind of like, let's say that someone locked you in a room and they were like giving you tasks. You know, like so that's what your job was, like a Mr. Beast sort of like scenario, right? Like you get $500,000 if you stay in this room for 6 months. Then like someone's giving you a message. What tools would you want to be able to do it, right? Like would you just want like a list of papers, or like would you want a calculator or like a computer, right? Probably I would want a computer, right? I'd want Google, I'd want like all of these things, right? And so like I wouldn't want the person to send me like a stack of papers being like, hey, this is probably all the information you need. I'd rather just be like, hey, just give me a computer, give me the problem, let me search it and figure it out, right? And so that's how I think about agents as well. Like they need like you know, they're stuck in a room.
I need to give them tools. So if you can go back to the slide you have, to the graph you had.
To the graph, like this, you mean, or?
Yeah, the stuff. So basically, that gathering context is basically, these are the tools that I'm offering you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm giving it like maybe an API for code generation, maybe I'm giving a SQL tool, maybe I'm giving a badge. These are all like examples, right? So yeah. You want a question?
So for all the agents that you're in a certain state, they share the same context window and it's a size.
Interesting. Yeah. So do agents share the context window? I think this is like an interesting question just overall about how you manage context. I think, and I haven't talked about this too much yet, but sub agents are like a very, very important way of managing context. I think that this is like, we're using more and more sub-agents inside of Claude Code, and I would think about like doing sub-agents very generally. So like what we might do for the spreadsheet agent is maybe we have a search sub-agent, right? So like sub-agents are great for when you need to do a lot of work and return an answer to the main agent. So for search, let's say the question is like, how do I find my revenue in 2026? Maybe you need to do a bunch of results. Maybe you need to like search the internet, maybe you need to search the spreadsheet, things like that. And there's a bunch of things that don't need to go into the context of the main agent. The main agent just needs to see the follow result, right? And so that's a great sub-agent task. I don't have a dedicated sub-agent slide here, but like, yeah, they're very, very useful, and I think a great way to think about things. Yeah,
and just to build on that question, actually, for verification, for example, you can imagine doing that through a skill or a sub-agent. You may even want to have an adversarial, like the security example is a great one. You want to really go to town on it and not really have any sympathetic relationship with the work already done. I get it's a spectrum, but do you like, are you saying yes, you'd use a sub-agent here, you'd use a skill? How would you think about this?
Yeah, definitely. So question on like, do you sub-agents or? Oh,
make sure it works with make sure.
Oh, sure. Okay, yeah. Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, yeah, can you sub-agents for verification? Yes, I think this is a pattern. I think like ideally the best form of verification is rule-based, right? You're like, hey, is there like a null pointer or something? That's like easy verification. It doesn't lint or compile like as many rules as you can, try and insert them, and again be creative, right? Like for example, in Claude Code, if the agent tries to write to a file that we know it hasn't read yet, like we haven't seen it enter the read cache, we throw it an error. We tell it like, hey, you haven't read this file yet. Try reading it first, right? And that's an example of sort of like a deterministic tool that we insert into the verification step. And so as much as possible, like anytime you are thinking about verification, first step is like what can you do deterministically? What outputs can you do? And again, like when you're choosing which types of agents to make, the agents that have more deterministic rules are better. You know, like they just it just makes a lot of sense, right? So, of course, as the models get better and better at reasoning, then you can have these sub-agents that check the work of the main agent. The main thing there is to like avoid context pollution. So you probably wouldn't want to like fork the context. You'd probably want to start a new context session and just be like, hey, yeah, adversarially check the work of like this output was made by a junior analyst at McKinsey or something. They graduated from like not a grade school, like their GPA, just like feed it a bunch of stuff and then tell it to critique it, right? Like that's like one of the tools of the sub-agent, right? And so yeah, the more you like. As the models get better and better, that sort of verification will become better as well. But doing it deterministically is like a great start. Yeah.
Just a question about the verified work. So
yeah.
So let's say we found null pointers. It's probably easy to just say, okay, fix it. But like, let's say we deploy the production and the client is using it. That's not us. And they somehow get into a spot where the whole spreadsheet's deleted. And so like on what level do we need to bake in like ability to like undo tools? Because like let's say the QA agent determines that their spreadsheet is empty.
Yeah.
Not necessarily is able to undo
Let's see what it does.
Like, what was your advice there?
Yeah, so the question is like, how do you think about state and like undoing and redoing, being able to fix errors, basically, right? I think this is like a really good question, and honestly, another sort of like when you think about like what are agents good at, right? Like, or what problem domains are agents good at? How reversible is the work is like a really good intuition, right? So code.
Hold on, guys. I need to read this shit real quick.
Dealing with like very, very complex state machines that you can't undo or redo of, it does become harder, right? And I think one of the questions for you as an engineer is like, can you turn this into a reversible state machine, kind of like you said? Can you store state between checkpoints such that the user can be like, oh, my spreadsheet is messed up right now, just go back to the previous checkpoint, right? Potentially even can the model go back to previous checkpoints. I think someone had this like time travel tool that they were giving one of the coding agents, which was kind of cool, where you're like, it's like, you can time travel back to a point before this happened, you know what I mean? It's kind of fun. I think like all of these tools, some of them don't work that well yet, but you know, we'll get there. Yeah, thinking about state and verification is very useful, right? So, yeah, good question in the back.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about scale. So what if the spreadsheet is like millions of rows, millions and hundreds of thousands of columns, right? Or just like any sort of database. Like in that type of situation, how would you go about searching? There's obviously a context limit you have to cognitive for.
Yeah, this is great. I probably should have done the spreadsheet example as my coding example. For preview, my coding like agent is a Pokemon agent. Probably spreadsheet would have been better. Okay. The question was, what if the spreadsheet is very big? If you have a million rows, how do you think about
100 columns? Like
100,000 columns or 100 columns, whatever. Like, how do you think about it, right? Like, your database is also very big. Like, how do you do that? I think for all of these things, one, of course, as the data becomes larger and larger, it's just a harder problem. Like, you know, it just absolutely is. Your accuracy will go down, right? Like, Claude code is worse in larger code bases than it is in smaller code bases, right? As the models get better, they will get better at all of that. For all of these, I would think about like, how would I do this? If I had a spreadsheet that was like a million columns and a million rows, what would I do? I mean, I would need to start searching for it, right? I would need to be like if I'm searching for revenue, I'd be like searching Control F revenue, and then I'd go check each of these like results, and I'd be like, is this right? And then like I'd see like, is there a number here? And then I'd probably keep a scratch pad, like a new sheet where I'm like, hey, like equals revenue equals this, you know, and store this reference and keep going. So I think that's a good way of thinking about it. Is like the model you should never like read the entire spreadsheet into context because it would take too much, right? Like you want to give it like the starting amount of context. And that's also how you work, right? Like let's say that you open up the spreadsheet. What you see is rows is this, right? You see like the first 10 rows and the first like, you know, 30 columns or something, right? That's what you see. You don't load all of it into context right away. You probably have an intuition for like, hey, I should load more of this into context, right? And like, oh, I should navigate to this other sheet, right? And this other sheet has more data, right? But you need to like sort of, you gather context yourself, right? And so the agent can operate in the same way. It can like navigate to these sheets, read them, like try and like keep a scratch pad, keep some notes, and keep going. So that's how I think about it. Yeah, the back.
Yeah, so my question is about managing context collision. It actually, I guess, relates to the previous question. Do you have a rule of thumb for what fraction of the context window to use before you start hitting diminishing returns, or just it becomes less effective?
Yeah, the question is, context management. Do you have a rule of thumb for like how much of the context window to use before it becomes less effective? This is actually, I'd say, a pretty interesting problem right now. I think a lot of times when I talk to people who are using Claude Code, they're like, I'm on my 5th compact. I'm like, what? Like I like almost have never done a compact before. You know what I mean? Like I have to like test the UX myself by like forcing myself to get compacted. Just because like I tend to like clear the context window very often, right? When I'm using Claude Code myself, just because like at least in code, the state is in the files of the code base, right? So let's say that I made some changes. Claude Code can just look at my git diff and be like, oh, hey, these are the changes you made. It doesn't need to know like my entire chat history with it, you know, in order to continue a new task, right? And so in Claude Code, I clear the context very, very often. And I'm like, hey, look at my outstanding git changes. I'm working on this. Can you help me extend it in this way, right? That's like a way of thinking about it. And when you're building your own agent, like let's say we're building a spreadsheet agent, it gets a little bit more complex because your users are less technical, right? And they don't know what a context window is, right? That is like, I'd say a hard problem. I think there's like some UX design there of like, can you reset the conversation state, right? Like, can you, maybe every time the user asks a new question, can you do your own compact or something? And can you like summarize the context? Does it, like in a spreadsheet, a lot of the state is in the spreadsheet itself, so it probably doesn't need, you know, to know the entire context. Can you store user preferences as it goes so that you remember some of this stuff? You know, like there's a lot of like, again, like it's an art, there's like so many different angles and ways in which you can do this, right? But yeah, you are trying to like sort of minimize context usage. You probably don't need sonnet million context or something, you know what I mean? Like you just need good context management, like UX design, yeah. Yeah.
I just want to ask, the sub-agents were made to protect the context of the core agent, right?
That's right, yeah, sub-agents were made to protect the
spreadsheet. Would we be able to use multiple sub-agents and try to make a process so we chunk up the spreadsheet in the case where it's super large, so then the agents can kind of run through each portion like in parallel, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so like, one of the things I love about Claude Code is that we are like the best experience for using subagents, like especially subagents with Bash. It is very, very good. I didn't quite realize all the pain. I think if anyone's going to QCon, I believe Adam Wolf is giving a talk on QCon about how we did the Bash tool. Adam's a legend, and the Bash tool is such a good job. When you're running parallel subagents at the same time, Bash becomes very complex, and there are lots of like race conditions and stuff like that, and so there's a lot of work that we've solved there, right? So this is like one of the things I love about Claude Code is you can just be like, hey, like spin up 3 subagents to do this task, and we'll do that.
I might make a tool that allows, or a GUI of sorts. Speaking of GUIs, here it is. Claudia.so. I don't know what .so is, but I might play around with this on chat next time. Anyways, it's really dope. It just kind of, it looks like this. It shows you like, you know, running an agent. It's a better experience. It's all clicking around, run, do this, write the prompt. It's just a different experience than Claude Code. And so there's going to be a world where I can create an experience that's most suited to someone who's non-technical, like my wife. She's doing marketing related things. And if I can like create a plugin that has all the marketing tools that she likes and, you know, pulls the APIs for her, ideally, probably not, but ideally, goes in, creates APIs, pulls all that down, bundles all the tools, agents, hooks, commands, etc., and then allows her to use all those components in a GUI that doesn't require her to see things that are coding related or in that format that can be confusing. So imagine it being all drop down boxes, button clicks, and very, very light. Well, not light, but chat prompting. She'll probably like it. And so it might be worth building a GUI or using Claudia. It doesn't matter. But doing something to solve for these people who don't necessarily want to use Claude Code, because a lot of people don't. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. We'll see. Looks like this worked. And just, you know, for anybody who's wondering, this isn't like the finished version of the course. This is like, I came up with this idea Monday. It's Wednesday. And so my job is to work how I work, and that's through getting the concept out of my brain and onto the page, and then iterating. And eventually, during that iteration process, I'm already 10 steps ahead of most people. My job is to make it super useful and in a perfect order for someone who joins for free to want to then pay $200 a month. What does it look like to have a course that costs that much? That's the challenge here for me, is how do I make sure that the course, after the free 7 days where they have access to the first handful of lessons, whatever they may be. I don't know how that's going to work yet. But they need to see enough value and be given enough to where they say, all right, I'm gonna pull out my credit card and pay $200. And once they do that, they get the next set of courses or chapters. And I might make it so that they can access the entire thing at first, for the first, first people who are showing us love and becoming students. But I don't know. My only way is the only way I can think of it is making sure that this is super useful. Because if I make it useful enough, it'll make sense. If it's not useful, they won't pay. And I wouldn't either. So I can't blame them. All right. I think I'm gonna call it, man.
And in the agent SDK as well, you can just ask it to do that. So number one, sub agents are a great primitive in the agent SDK, and I haven't seen anyone do it as well. So that's like a big reason to use it. Yes, generally you want these sub agents to preserve context. Let's say if you have a spreadsheet, you could potentially have multiple read sub agents going on at the same time, right? So maybe the main agent is like, hey, can this agent read and summarize sheet 1? Can this agent read and summarize sheet 2? Can this agent summarize sheet 3? And then they return.
All right, I'm pretty tired, but I'm going to try to run this real quick so y'all can see it. Because this is
the results, and then
I haven't played with Claudia since it had to have been July, maybe June or July. No, it had to have been between July and August because I was at the old office, the old Antler office. I work out of Antler VC here downtown Austin, Texas. I'm really excited about that and being able to say that because, it's a big deal to me. All right, it is damaged and cannot be opened is what it says. That's fun. I hate it when stuff like that happens, man. It's like, why, bro? Why can't I use this? All right, I'll figure it out and then I'll come back once it's fixed. So weird. Yes, this both of these are in the trash. Let's empty the trash. I'll show it to y'all eventually here. Let's try one more. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Oops. Cloud API credentials. Yeah, you can only do this through the API. I need to be able to do this through the plan feature. I forgot about that. That was one of the drawbacks is you have to use the API. What? Did they switch it? Op code? What are we doing? That's dope. So did they just abandon the product or the project? Yeah, this is wild. Okay, I think I'm seeing the. It looks like they got rid of it. Tracking usage. Yeah, it's actually really dope. I'll play with it a little bit later. I submitted my first pull request that got for somebody else's repo. Whatever. All right, I'll catch y'all next time, man. Yeah. 2 hours. This might be one of the longest streams I've ever done. Thanks.